Good afternoon. Today in Westminster we are interviewing Philip Davies, who is the Member of Parliament for Shipley in West Yorkshire. He was elected as a Member of Parliament in 2005 and re-elected in 2010. You've recently said that international aid policy is failing. Could you explain why you believe this?
Well, for two reasons really. One is simply that to me we can't afford to increase our overseas aid budget at a time when we haven't got any money and we're having to cut back on things at home. It seems to me that when you have to cut your spending, you have to cut your spending. And I wouldn't suggest to one of my neighbours that they got into debt in order to give some money to charity. And in effect, what we're doing is, as a country, is we're doing just that. We're getting into debt to hand over to other countries. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't have any overseas aid, but we should, we've got a proud tradition of giving humanitarian assistance when people face some terrible situations, but we just can't afford to give it at the scale that we're giving it. The other point is really that is to start questioning whether or not overseas aid is working, because in many respects what we find is, and we've certainly seen this in Africa, is that it hasn't really got people out of poverty. It's merely entrenched poverty and sort of welfare dependency. And that actually, as we've seen in countries like China and India in particular, it's trade that's got people out of poverty, not aid. In many respects, some of the countries, they've got terrible governance, they're corrupt, they've got dictatorships who confiscate people's equipment and land, and we can't just keep giving money to countries that have got a failing government. We've got to say to some of these countries, actually, you've got to sort yourselves out here, and if you sort yourselves out, we'll help you along the way, but we're not going to keep pouring money into countries that are corrupt and have dictatorships that are not helping their own people. So that's my strongly held view, that we haven't got the money to do it to the level that we are doing at the moment, and that I'm not actually convinced that the money that we give is sensibly used anyway.
Do you think the aid actually reaches the individuals that need it?
In some cases it does, but I think the worst aid is government to government aid, and I think there's lots of evidence to show that gets creamed off by dictators and doesn't actually get through to the people who need it most. I would much sooner we did things through charities that are on the ground. Actually, even I'd be much happier if the government gave the money by giving tax relief to people who wanted to go out and volunteer to help on the ground in some of these countries. That would be a much more effective way of helping. I just think pouring money into places, not knowing necessarily where it's going, might make people back here feel good about themselves, but it doesn't necessarily help the people who are actually in most need.
Do you think we should link, say, human rights and aid, so we will give aid to a government or to individuals or charities within that country, providing the government will actually uphold certain human rights or basic human rights for its citizens?
Yes, so I think we should always put conditions on aid, and the conditions should largely be around making sure the government in that country actually plays its part in terms of the governance that's required, and making sure that they look after their own people. And we can't say to every country in the world, look, it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter how you govern your country, how you spend your money that you've got, don't worry about it, but we'll look after your people for you. We can neither afford to do that, and nor is it desirable to do that. It's got to come with responsibilities as well, and we should be saying to lots of these countries, look, if you do this, we'll give you some support. It will be for a limited period of time, and after so long, you should be able to stand on your own 2 feet. And actually increasing the aid budget, to me, is a sign of failure, not success.
Are there any conditions at the moment on international aid, or is it kind of giving the money in a way and asking the government to be considerable with where they spend it?
I think it varies, to be honest. I think in some cases it is done in partnership. There are some conditions attached. In other countries, maybe less so. What I would like to see the government do is have for each country, have a plan as to exactly what we are prepared to help with, what we can afford, what we expect from that particular country as well, and a clear timeline to show that in so many years' time we'll stop giving them aid, because in that time they should be able to look after themselves. And if we had that kind of plan for every single country, I'd be a lot happier. What I'm not happy with is this idea that all we've got to keep doing is giving more and more money over. It's a socialist view to think that problems are solved just by throwing money at it, and they're not. And actually, we should be making sure that the money's spent more wisely.
If you have any follow-up questions, or if you have any question for another Member of Parliament, please send them to yourbritain.yoursay@gmail.com, and I'll do my best in getting them answered. For now, keep an eye out on our website, www.yourbritainyoursay.blogspot.com. Subscribe to our social network sites to keep updated with what's happening in Parliament and more videos of this sort. On Facebook we are under Your Britain, Your Say, and on Twitter our tag is @your__Britain. Thank you for watching, and I hope you watch our future videos.